Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 28 of the Hot Path Show. I'm Johnny, and I'm doing a solo episode today. Also, another little bit of a weird episode because it's also going to be a pre-recorded one. I'm going to be traveling during the time that the shows usually go live, so unfortunately, we are pre-recorded today. I will do my best to be available, at least just kind of in the YouTube chat, interacting with you all. So if you do have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, ideas, what have you, feel free to just drop those in the comment section and I will get to them as we see fit. Today's episode is probably going to be a little bit of a shorter one, kind of condensed, but there's a lot of really cool and exciting things to talk about. So didn't want to skip this week because there's a lot of cool stuff going on this week and some really cool announcements for some things that are going to be happening soon. And then also wanted to also just kind of give some ECS topics because we actually did get a new version of the entities packages. So it's 1.3.0 pre-release number 4. Okay, we were previously on an experimental, now it's a pre-release. We'll get to all that stuff in a little bit. And then also just wanted to talk a little bit about using terrains in Unity ECS because it's actually something that came up in the comment section on a recent video, which I'm going to be talking about right now. So yeah, again, later on, we're going to be talking about some Unity ECS terrain stuff. So that will be all fun and good. So what I wanted to talk about is the Unity Asset Store is hosting a sale right now. This is called the Dev Days of Summer Sale. It's a really cool sale because basically what happens is the Unity Asset Store reached out to a bunch of YouTube, Twitch creators, and so on, and basically just asked us to say like, hey, what are your favorite assets? We're going to create a sale around these. So there's this big sale going on right now, and these are, again, all picked out by us creators. So a lot of very cool assets that are all part of this here. So would highly recommend checking that out. But it is particularly exciting because they did ask me to be part of this sale. So yeah, I did create a little video along with it. So you may have seen that go up on the YouTube channel. I kind of just did like a high level overview about basically kind of the main things that you need to consider if you're making a city builder type project. And I showed you, a bunch of assets that I selected for the sale and how you could use these to kind of create a city builder type game. So real quick, we can just kind of go into what all these assets are. So of course have Agents Navigation Crowds expansion, the GPU ECS Animation Baker, Rukonka ECS Animation System, the third-person camera for Dots, Doozy UI Manager, Fake Interior, Dots Traffic City, Black Box Improved Prefabs, the Microsplat Ultimate Pack, the Odin Inspector and Serializer, Modern UI Pack, and Damage Numbers Pro. So a bunch of these you may already be familiar with because I've kind of featured on the channel before or talked about in some other contexts. But I did just kind of have this whole video right here where I'm basically going into, kind of just giving a quick little overview about all these asset packs and how they could be used in the context of a city builder game. A couple interesting ones that I do want to call out. Dots Traffic City. This is kind of like the first one that I focus on in this particular video. It's a particularly interesting one because it is kind of like a full project that is kind of like already built out with a lot of things for you. So if you do want to use this in an existing project, I'd probably recommend creating a separate project with this and kind of pulling things into the main project as you see fit. But yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff in this asset, which is super cool. Also, Fake Interior. This one is created by Kanakle Bang, which of course is the name of Tobias's development studio. So this asset was created by Tobias. This is definitely a really cool one here, because basically what's going on is it's a shader that just kind of maps onto like a regular cube, and you basically get this kind of fake interior type look. So as you're kind of moving around, you get this like perspective that like there's actually a room inside there, but it's all really just a shader trick that's going on. So yeah, it's a super cool asset. And, you can definitely configure it to have kind of, more interesting things happening inside the different rooms if you do so choose. Another one that I'm going to be discussing a little bit more in depth today is the Microsplat Ultimate Bundle. Wanted to call this one out specifically because I actually didn't notice that there were some packages not included in this Ultimate Bundle that are kind of required for use with ECS. So I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later. But otherwise, it is a really cool asset pack where you can do some cool stuff with terrains. Yeah, so that is basically the Dev Days of Summer Sale. Again, check out the video that I did on this, as well as, if any of these assets interest you, yeah, check them out. So what else do we got going on here? Okay. Oh, so really big news here. So as you all may know, Unity's annual Unite event is coming up. It's happening this year in Barcelona in the middle of September. So I'm going to be in attendance there. We've also said that Tobias is going to be in attendance there. And also, we do have a third special announcements for you fans of the Hot Path show. So I've asked our good friend Danny to record a little video of what's going on here. And this also may be one of the most amazing videos that I've ever received in my life. By the way, if you get a little motion sickness, if you're watching things on video, it's not too bad, but it's funny. You'll see.
Hi, I have some exciting news to tell you all. I will be going to Unite. I will be joined by my fellow co-worker Anne van Eyde, and we will be doing a talk on dots. It's called Connecting the Dots, Let's Make a Game. The idea being that we will give you a tool set, a little bit of a tool belt, so to say, of all the features in entities, or at the very least, enough features in entities that you can start making your own game. It will be a beginner's focused guide, and we will be presenting it in a visual manner. So instead of just talking about code and showing code, we will be showing code along with a visual representation of what that code does. And we will talk about it in a way where we go concept by concept. And the idea being that you will get a little tool belt every time, and then you can start going home and making your own cool things. I am very excited to show you guys this presentation, and I guess it means that we'll be seeing each other at Unite, if you're going, that is. I will obviously be joined by my fellow Hot Path show people, so Johnny and Tobias, and if you guys want to meet us, you can come to Unite in Barcelona, which is also why I'm out in this nice weather, because for whatever reason it's nice weather right here. And I'm sure it will be in Barcelona too. So if that's not a reason to come, I don't know what is. I am definitely very excited. And yeah, if you want to see some cool dots people at Unite, you can come there and see us. That's all.
Wow. Thank you for that, Danny. That was very amazing. So yeah, very exciting to see that Danny is going to be at Unite as well. So we have the trio of the Hot Path show all going to be there in person. Still working out some logistics, but we definitely want to try and do an in-person episode of the Hot Path show. By the way, a little behind the scenes from Danny's filming there. This is kind of the tripod setup that was going on here. I guess he didn't have a tripod, so he just kind of stuck it in a tree, kind of like in the middle of some field here. And so as the wind was coming through, that's why you could see the camera bouncing around a little bit. So yeah, fun times indeed. But yeah, Unite's going to be really exciting. And yeah, not only is Danny going to be present, but him and his coworker Anna are also going to be presenting a talk there called Connecting the Dots. Just kind of like an overview about, using dots. And it's going to be a very good practical examples. Again, put on by the people who are actually developing dots in ECS. So I think that's going to be a really, really excellent talk. So looking forward to seeing you all there. What else is going on? Oh, also with Unite, I think on the, again, still kind of finalizing the details, but I think there's going to be kind of like some meet and greet type thing. I'm going to be there, and a bunch of other creators are going to be there. I'm pretty sure Code Monkey will be there, and a couple other people you may recognize as well. But of course, I'll be just wandering around the show floor and everything. So if you see me, feel free to come up and say hello, and would love to hear about the projects you're working on and everything. So what else do we got going on here? Oh, and yeah, by the way, so I probably should pull this up. Let me see if I can access this without too much trouble here. But basically, all the talks for Unite were also just announced. I'm going to write this down to put this in the description. So if I remember, it should be in the description for y'all. So let me actually pull up. There is a link here somewhere. Session catalog. Is this it here? This is indeed it here. We'll share this and bring this up here. So yeah, cool one here. Accelerating the creation of your competitive multiplayer game. This one's put on by Hirsch as well as Esteban. Esteban's kind of a senior developer advocate. And Hirsch is, I know, doing a lot of stuff kind of with the Dots and Netcode teams. Really good guys there. And then, yeah, that's like, you can see there's a bunch of good stuff going on here. Some best practices, browser stuff, some BMW stuff, performance profiling. What else do we got here? Let's find. Here's Danny's talk, connecting the dots. Let's make a game with entities. And as you can see, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on. I think there's like 50 something talks and, a wide variety of topics. Some things that probably you'll find very interesting, some things maybe not as much interesting, but still a lot of a very good mix of things overall. I think, yeah, there's going to be something for everybody there for sure. So yeah, that is Unite. And that is pretty much all I have to say for that for now. I definitely think it's going to be a very exciting Unite this year. Yeah, so a couple of things just want to mention real quick. As a reminder, you can support us on Patreon as well as through YouTube memberships. I recently just put up a couple bonus episodes, one where I went through all the Dots packages and just did a little review on them about kind of, what I think about the status of them right now, some things that I like about them, some things that I don't like about them, and where I want to see these packages go in the future. So that was definitely a fun one. Also, for the behind the scenes people, I put out a little a cooking show where I was basically just kind of doing my weekly meal prep, just to kind of show you how I fuel myself, because that's kind of like a, semi-related behind the scenes topic. So yeah, with that, I think we can get into some of our actual more Dots topics here. So I'm going to go ahead and start by talking about the changelog for entities 1.3.0 pre-release 4. Definitely not a huge update, but a little bit of a minor name change, because the previous one that we had that we went over a couple episodes ago, it was an experimental release. So now this is considered a pre-release. So it's still not necessarily kind of a full. It's not like the default one that you kind of download in the editor. Actually, I can't remember. Unity 6 might have 1.3 as the default one, but either way, you can still install it either way. And by the way, this is a really cool feature where you can basically click on this link and it will open Unity automatically with that proper package and version pre-populated. So as you can see, they just changed a burst dependency here. This is the entities package, by the way, just the main ECS package. So they did deprecate the enable simple system dependencies. So it said it's going to be removed in the future release as it no longer provides any benefit. So it is kind of marked as deprecated here. And so this is also something that has been deprecated. So the entity query capture mode at record enum value for entity command buffer is now deprecated. So if I remember correctly, the way that entity command buffers used to work, yeah, I'd have to check on this, but I think at one point it was either this way or at least we had the option to do it this way, is that when we would record operations for an entity command buffer against a entity query rather than one specific entity. So we're saying, changing a bunch of entities at one time. It would basically do that entity query, execute that entity query while it's doing the recording step. However, this ended up being quite inefficient, and they kind of like switched people to going to the entity query mode of capturing it at playback time. So, of course, with entity command buffers, we record operations and then later on we end up playing them back. So the idea here is that it actually only executes that entity query at the playback phase, which I think ended up being a whole lot faster. So they say capture at record mode can be several hundred times slower than capture at playback. So for some reason, you still do need the capture at record semantics, and performance isn't a concern for you. They say the array of entities matching the query can be captured manually and passed into the corresponding entity command buffer command. So rather than operating on a entity query, you would operate on a native array of entities because you basically have that group of entities right there. And then, when you pass those in, it has that list of entities there. So kind of a minor thing. I think they had been maybe spitting out some warnings in the console if you did use the at record mode. So now everything's basically defaulted to at playback time. So because it's deprecated, it'll probably be eventually removed at one point, and we won't need to have this enum in here. This enum kind of seemed like it was a little bit of a transition from the existing setup to kind of the more efficient setup. We also have some fixes here. So usage of system API get component RW and get component RW in entities for each. They don't really specify what was wrong with that, but I guess there were maybe some issues. Regression in compilation time with assemblies with lots of system methods. So that's awesome. Improvements in compilation time. And we also have entity component store leaked memory during domain reload. So cleaned up a little memory leak there. So very good. Go ahead and move over on into the entities graphics. So entities graphics basically just have one entry here. So pink methods when causing a domain reload while a subscene is opened with light mapped materials. So I guess very specific case that some materials ended up getting pink. Unity physics, couple very minor changes here. So something was added. So the collision tolerance in the collision world, which defines the minimum distance required for creating contact between rigid bodies, is now configurable. So this is a cool new addition. It says the default value has been changed to a smaller, more performant value of 0.01 meters. They say if you observe any tunneling issues in your use case, please increase the value via the physics step authoring component. So basically this is just kind of like a tolerance. So if we have, two objects, I'm assuming they can kind of do some optimizations where, if things are not quite overlapped, but they're within that, 0.01, tolerance there, it's considered a collision at that point. So updated the burst dependency and prevent an entities.null entries in the physics collider key entity pair buffer of the rigid body entities with compound colliders. Okay, so that's going on as well. Netcode for entities. There's actually a good amount of stuff in netcode for entities here. So we have this optional ID5 ghost type property to the ghost creation config struct, which allows you to provide your own UUID identifier when creating a ghost prefab at runtime instead of relying on the auto-generated one, which uses the SHA-1 of the ghost name. That's not something that I have much of a comment on because I haven't really dealt with any limitations, anything pertaining to that. So that's cool. Network stream driver reset driver to properly reset the network driver store. Okay, that's not something that I've had the need to look into, but sounds good that we are resetting it. Some changes here. All simulate component enable states are resetting using a job instead of doing that synchronously on the main thread. Reason for the change, this fact was including a big stall at the end of the prediction loop. However, the benefits is only visible when there's a large number of jobified workflows. We also have corrected incorrect / missing changelog entries across many previous versions. Okay, so now what do we have to go through all the previous changelogs and find out all the stuff that was in? I don't think all this stuff was in here in 1.3 experimental 1. I'll have to go back to the previous video where we looked at the 1.3.1, but this looks way bigger than I remember. Crazy. Okay, that's funny. I've never seen that. One of the changelog entries is we updated previous changelog entries. Okay. Updated burst dependency, unified multiplayer project settings. Interesting. Wonder what that actually means. If there's any kind of, maybe netcode for game objects things that are now also configurable through netcode for entities. So maybe we're kind of working our way towards that unification of the netcode stacks. Moved menu items to a collective place to improve workflows. This removes the multiplayer menu and integrates into a common place Windows Assets Create. Okay, this sounds cool. I'll have to check that out if it's a little bit more streamlined. So yeah, they're changing around some things on some windows. Dependency on Unity Transport has been updated. Re-exposed try find auto connect endpoint and has default address and port set with small documentation updates. Okay, so it sounds like maybe they had some things exposed, they locked them down, re-exposed them. Sounds good. They're kind of, analyzing what people need and, giving people the appropriate APIs for their use cases. Concurrent driver store and network driver store concurrent are now public, and you can use the network driver store concurrent in your jobs to send and receive data. Sweet. So yeah, good amount of stuff in netcode for entities. And yeah, I really want to look into the previous one because there might actually end up being a lot of stuff that was added in that 1.3.0 experimental one. That's really funny. I didn't notice that. And yeah, so I think those are kind of the main packages that have some updates there. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about kind of doing some terrain stuff in Unity ECS. Unfortunately, I had all this stuff open and then my camera wasn't working, so I had to restart my computer. And now everything is closed, so I'm going to open a couple of Unity projects and stall time. Should we rewatch the Danny video? Yeah, why not? We can rewatch the Danny video here.
Hi, I have some exciting news to tell you all. I will be going to Unite. I will be joined by my fellow co-worker Anne van Eyde, and we will be doing a talk on dots. It's called Connecting the Dots, Let's Make a Game. The idea being that we will give you a tool set, a little bit of a tool belt, so to say, of all the features in entities, or at the very least enough features in entities that you can start making your own game. It will be a beginner's focused guide, and we will be presenting it in a visual manner. So instead of just talking about code and showing code, we will be showing code along with a visual representation of what that code does. And we will talk about it in a way where we go concept by concept. And the idea being that you will get a little tool belt every time, and then you can start going home and making your own cool things. I am very excited to show you guys this presentation, and I guess it means that we'll be seeing each other at Unite, if you're going, that is. I will obviously be joined by my fellow Hot Path Show people, so Johnny and Tobias, and if you guys want to meet us, you can come to Unite in Barcelona, which is also why I'm out in this nice weather, because for whatever reason it's nice weather right here. And I'm sure it will be in Barcelona too. So if that's not a reason to come, I don't know what is. I am definitely very excited. And yeah, if you want to see some cool Dutch people at Unite, you can come there and see us. That's all.
All right, thanks for stalling time for us a little bit there, Danny. Just yeah, shout out to Danny. Everyone go show him some love over on Twitter or wherever you contact Danny usually. What do we got here? Let me share my screen. Okay, so here we have Unity. So what is going on here is that I have a terrain. And again, I'm going to be showing how terrain works with Unity ECS. So we can basically see what I have here is just like, little just kind of random terrain that we can kind of test with. And I have this little sphere that's ideally going to drop down on the terrain and start moving around. So basically if I hit the play button, I don't think I have fast interplay mode enabled right now, so it takes a sec. As you can see, the sphere just falls right through because of course the sphere is an entity inside the entity scene and the terrain is inside our regular sample scene. So you say, okay, cool, let's go ahead and take our terrain and drag it into the entity scene. Well, it's kind of still there. It looks like the tools are still kind of highlighting it, but it's not actually showing up. And if I press the play button, let's see what happens to the sphere. I don't know how well you're probably going to be able to see this in the stream here, but yeah, basically the sphere just falls straight through down to the ground. So that's of course not what we want to happen. So basically this is just kind of like started off as a regular Unity terrain, just kind of did the regular Unity terrain stuff on that. Now I added this microsplat terrain on here. The thing with the microsplat terrain is, like I mentioned, that this is part of the microsplat ultimate pack. And basically what's going on with this is it kind of gives you, a lot more options for configuring terrain. There's a lot more performance options. I'm definitely not doing it justice by, explaining it right there, but go check the documentation on microsplat to see kind of what it's all about and everything. So microsplat itself, it actually is there's a free core module of it that kind of gives you this basic ability to convert a terrain, whether you created it through Unity or some other third-party software, to this kind of microsplat compatible terrain. And then there's like a bunch of extras you can get for additional terrain manipulation tools, the ability to add like lava and different textures and everything to them. So there's a lot of stuff, and a lot of that stuff you get with the Ultimate Pack. So basically, all that to say, what we can do here is we can just add this microsplat terrain on there. Now, by default, what's going to happen is, if I select this, your terrain is going to look like this. It's going to look all magenta, which is no bueno. Because the reason for that is microsplat by default uses Unity's built-in render pipeline. It has been in development for a very long time, and it was built off of the Unity built-in render pipeline. The developer Jason Booth did a ton of optimizations, very low-level optimizations that are deeply ingrained with the built-in render pipeline. And unfortunately, Unity is like, hey, let's kind of move things over to URP. And of course, as many of you know, entities graphics, the ability for us to render entities, only works with the universal render pipeline, which is quite unfortunately. So what ends up happening is we actually do have to purchase a separate module for the microsplat in order to be compatible with the universal render pipeline or the high definition render pipeline. Now go on the Unity asset store, and so there are these basically packs that you need to purchase are $20 each, and you have to get the one for the specific version of Unity that you're using and also the specific render pipeline that you're using. So for example, this project is using Unity 6 and I'm using the universal render pipeline. So I had to purchase the specific pack for Unity 6 and URP. So I can go to this render loop thing here, and this is just on the shader, or this is on the material here rather, and I can change this to URP6. I basically just imported the package, and then I can now change the render loop to the URP6 render loop. So now we can actually see that we have kind of some basic terrain here, and it's just like, I don't have any texture on it or anything. It's just a white texture. So, yeah, so that is kind of a very specific detail. And that's something that unfortunately, when I created my video about the asset store, I didn't realize that the ultimate pack didn't actually include these expansion packs that you need for it to be compatible with the scriptable render pipelines and all that. So yeah, and if you're say on like 2022 HDRP, you have to get a specific one for that, because basically, I guess with each version of Unity, there's some differences in the URP, how URP works and everything like that. And I guess it was a lot of work for the developer, so they kind of are selling these packs individually for that purpose. So anyways, we can now see it inside Unity all correctly and everything. Now the next thing that we want to do is actually get this in an ECS compatible state here. So the way that we're going to do this is on the terrain here, we'll go to Window and Microsplat. And I should also mention that, after this portion of the video, I'm going to be showing you how you can kind of do this without purchasing anything with Microsplat or any of that, how you can kind of use Unity terrains, just with the existing tools that are available to you. So anyways, make sure we have the, make sure we have the terrain selected, go to Window and Microsplats, and then we'll go ahead and go to Terrain to Mesh. And it will pop up with this little window here and allow us to make some kind of configuration options. Now, I'm not a super expert on this, so definitely refer to the documentation, but basically, the thing with chunks is this kind of divides our big terrain up into multiple chunks. Now, this can be really nice if we have a very large terrain and we want to use something, say, like, I don't know, sub-scene streaming, or just kind of some, basic, more basic kind of occlusion culling, where we're basically just kind of, enabling and disabling, either parts of the objects or the objects entirely. So we can basically, change this. So if we bring this up to, say, chunks of 4, then it's going to break that whole terrain up into a 4x4 grid. And then here we can set the, subdivisions and some other things on it. We can also say, add our colliders here. And then, yeah, all this stuff looks good to me. And we'll go ahead and say convert. So now we'll see what is going on here. We have the terrain. Let me actually just disable the main terrain. And it looks like on here, template material, we'll have to go ahead and select this and change this over to the URP6 material. So now we can see this. So yeah, just depending on how I set the, what's it called? The like resolution settings and everything like that. You can see this is, a little bit more jagged and kind of low poly than it was previously. So you may need to end up kind of doing a little bit of tweaking when you're kind of doing this conversion process. Now, the nice thing about this is if we say click on this terrain, it's this, microsplash terrain script here. But if we actually go under this, we have all these individual terrain objects. So there should be a total of 16 of these because, again, it's a 4x4 grid. So if we say click on one of these, click, we have basically a mesh renderer, mesh filter, mesh collider. And so you see that it doesn't have any like the regular Unity terrain stuff. Like it's just all basic, hey, let's just, render this. We have a collider, all that good stuff. So now I'll just go ahead and take this whole terrain thing, drop it into our entities scene here. And then now I'll go ahead and expand out this scene mode and go ahead and hit play. And then what we see here is the sphere now properly interacts with the terrain. You'll see that it is kind of, rolling down the terrain and everything like that, just as we would want it to and expect it to. So yeah, that is now kind of fully compatible in an ECS context. Again, very quickly, didn't have to do any coding. It's just, dropping some scripts on, doing a little bit of configuration, and you're good to go. So, next thing that I would like to show is how to do this without using any of the microsplat stuff. Oh, by the way, I should mention, so yeah, with the microsplat stuff, your options are, you can either get the ultimate pack, which is on sale right now. It's 50% off, so it's $99 rather than $200. Again, it was one of the assets that I included in my Dev Days of Summer pick. And again, there's a lot of really cool things in there. It has the terrain tools, because the terrain tools is a separate pack. However, that is part of the big ultimate pack. And there's, other stuff like, again, more configuration tools, visual effects, lots of really cool things. Again, check out the asset store page to see everything that it has. However, if you don't necessarily need all the bells and whistles of the ultimate pack, because again, with the ultimate pack, you still do need to purchase the specific SRP conversion pack for yours. I hope this is not too confusing. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts here. But again, if you don't need all the bells and whistles of the ultimate pack, what I'd recommend doing is just getting the Microsplat core pack, because that's completely free. Then you can purchase the SRP pack that you need, again, the one that's compatible with your version of Unity, and either if you're using URP or HDRP. And then the only other thing that you would need to purchase is the terrain mesh conversion. I think it's, just Microsplat mesh terrain is what the pack is called. And so that's another $20 pack as well. So going that route, you're in it for a total of $40 rather than $120 if you're getting the ultimate pack on sale plus the URP or the SRP conversion pack for whatever you need. So yeah, those are kind of your options if you want to go the Microsplat route. Again, Microsplat's just really good in performance overall, so it's just kind of like a good pack to have. So however, if you don't want to go the Microsplat route and if you want to do things a little bit more manually, I'm going to be showing you how you do that here. So basically what I have is, we can just kind of ignore this. This was the one thing I was testing around with a little bit first here. So we have this terrain here. With this terrain, it's just kind of, regular Unity terrain. It has the terrain collider and all this. That terrain authoring should not be on there. So yeah, basically what I did here is I created the terrain inside the sample scene. And I mean, this gets kind of complex, the things that you can do here, because basically what we're doing here is we're just kind of like more manually creating a mesh. So I'm still using a terrain in the main subscene to essentially do all the rendering. So we actually don't even need this terrain collider unless you still wanted some game objects to interact with that terrain collider. So all we really need is this terrain here. And then what I have here is this entity. And this entity is basically just a copy of this main terrain one here. And I dropped it into the entity scene. Again, we're not seeing it rendering because of the current limitations of the ECS packages. So, even though it has the terrain and terrain collider components, we actually may not even need this terrain collider. I don't think I'm using this, but I'll leave it on there for now. So yeah, again, because it's part of the entity scene, it's not actually rendering. So I'm basically just using this kind of main terrain for rendering. Again, probably not the most efficient, but it's good to demonstrate the point. But really the main thing here is that the terrain in the subscene has a terrain component as well as this terrain authoring here. So I'll go ahead and pop open this terrain authoring script here. I should mention that this is actually something that I found online after just a quick Google. I ended up doing a little bit of modifications to make it work a little bit better for what I need. But yeah, so basically what's going on here is we have this physics material template. So you'll see that this is actually what we're setting here. And this physics material template is where we set the collision response, friction, restitution, any collision filters, if it belongs to a particular layer or collides with particular layers but not others. We define that all in these physics material templates. And then we can say drop this into here. And then we're going to be going through this baking process. Now, basically what's happening for this baking process is we're taking Unity's terrain. We're going to sample a bunch of points off the terrain and then creating a collider, a fully ECS compatible collider, adding that to a component, and then basically running that in the application. So kind of what's going on here is you'll see in the baker here, we just do terrain, get component terrain, and then we can here get the resolution and size and everything like that, just kind of like getting some things off the terrain component. We have to allocate a native array of floats. Basically, we get this native array that kind of like samples all of the different points, because really what a terrain is it's just kind of like a big height map essentially. So what we're doing here is we're just kind of like sampling all the XY coordinates or XZ coordinates and then figuring out what the Y value is at any given position. And so we can do that by, there's this terrain data.getHeights. And so what we pass in here is just kind of like, this is the 0, 0, the resolution by resolution, and it returns us a 2-dimensional array of terrain heights. Now we basically have to flatten this array. So, this function kind of was added in here, these nested for loops, which basically just kind of converts this 2-dimensional array to a 1-dimensional array. So now we basically just have a 1-dimensional array of all these height floats. So after that, we'll get a reference to our physics template, and here we can create a new collision filter using the templates belongs to and collides with values. Same thing here, we'll create a physics material. By the way, this is just called material, but this is the Unity dots physics material here. And then basically all these things we're just getting from the physics template. We're just checking friction, restitution, yada, yada, yada. And then here's kind of the part where we actually create the physics collider here. So we say var collider equals new physics collider. And then the underlying value is actually a blob asset reference of type collider. And we can get this blob asset reference by doing a terrain collider.create. And here we pass in that native array of collider heights. We also pass in this size value. The size value looks to be an int 2 of resolution by resolution. Scale value is a float 3. Again, we can get that from the terrain data for the height map scale. And then we also pass in the type of collision method that we want, our collision filter, as well as our collision material, these two things that we created up here. So this creates the collider with the appropriate properties that we want. And then basically these other steps just kind of, add all the necessary things to the entity to get that collider component to work essentially. And then there also is this generate mesh function, but this was commented out. So I'm not sure if there's actually a way to use this to generate a mesh to kind of render it. It seems like it is. I just haven't really looked at it. I mean, it seems like that's exactly what it's doing, but for some reason it's commented out. And I just wasn't necessarily, didn't take the, 5 minutes or whatever to implement that. So yeah, that's basically what happens. So again, what's going on here is we have this terrain and then it just basically creates this terrain physics collider. Again, we could probably create the mesh if we wanted to, but I'm still using the game object mesh for rendering. And so again, we can kind of go into our scene here, hit play on this, and then we can watch the sphere basically fall down and interact with the terrain collider here. So it just kind of will start rolling around on the terrain exactly as we would expect it to. So yeah, very exciting stuff. Okay, so I think that's basically all that I wanted to say for using terrains in Unity ECS. Yeah, if you have any questions, again, feel free to leave them in the comment section or the live comments as well, live chat, as it were. Again, we're pre-recorded today, but hopefully I'll be available to answer some of your questions that you have as well. Okay, so next up, we're kind of getting close to the end of the show. Again, I said it was going to be a little bit of a shorter episode here today. So one thing that I did want to share is another content creator who I came across a little bit ago. They just had one video in particular about creating a game, or creating like essentially an ECS game engine. I can't remember if I shared this on a previous episode of the Hot Path Show, but he is basically making an entity component system for my game engine. They're kind of doing this from scratch. I think they're using C++. And so yeah, basically they're kind of talking about how they're kind of starting to build things out, and they're going to go into some of the more lower level things that they're doing. In this particular instance, they're creating a sparse set and a dense set mapping to that sparse set. So yeah, it's just kind of cool, like getting a little bit of a glimpse into kind of some of the lower level ECS concepts here. And yeah, they kind of did a little bit of a test kind of towards the end here where how many entities is this? Is this 1 million or 100,000 or something? I can't remember exactly what they said it was. So 100,000 plus. Okay. And yeah, 100,000 here at 60 frames a second. And again, they're just kind of like rendering a bunch of quads at this point, but yeah, it is kind of like a, entity component system type model. And this video in particular that he just released a couple days ago, it looks like, it was pretty interesting kind of going into, the optimizations that he made and how it kind of cleaned up some of the code. So it's definitely a worthwhile watch. So yeah, the creator is Cient, Cient. And yeah, would definitely recommend giving it a look. Okay, and then, so yeah, with that, we can basically kind of close out our show here. The final thing that we would like to do is thank all of our Patreon supporters. We really do appreciate your support. Again, we're a small operation over here, so your support does really go a long way. Especially do want to give a shout out to the supporters at the CPU Register tier, which is our highest tier of Patreon and YouTube support. Excuse me. So thank you to eCool as well as Hakan Viajando. It's one of those things, like it's a YouTube name and it's all lowercase, so I don't know quite where it breaks up yet. Maybe I'll just have to kind of stare at this and focus, but either way, thank you very much for your gracious support. We really do appreciate it. So yeah, anyways, with that, that'll conclude episode 28 of the Hot Path Show. Really hope you enjoyed this one. I think we're going to be back live next week. Just kind of, again, a little bit of a scheduling conflict. I'm doing a little bit of traveling, and yeah, weren't able to do it live today, unfortunately. But anyways, regardless, hope you all enjoyed it, and have a wonderful weekend ahead.